The wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Vanar 7 like a living thing, hungry and cruel. Corporal Jessa Rhine lay half-buried in snow, her environmental suit flickering its final warnings across a cracked display. The expedition had left her behind. Not out of malice, she told herself through chattering teeth, but necessity. When the blizzard had struck and the transport's engines failed, someone had to stay behind to lighten the load. She'd volunteered. She'd thought she was buying them time. Now, as her core temperature dropped and her vision blurred, she realized she'd bought herself a cold grave instead. The human body, they said, was remarkably resilient. It could survive extremes that would kill most sentient species in the galaxy. But even human endurance had limits, and Jessa was rapidly approaching hers. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago. Her thoughts moved like sludge through her freezing brain. She'd stopped shivering. That was bad. She knew that was bad. Through the white curtain of snow, something moved. Jessa's frost-rimmed eyes struggled to focus, shapes low to the ground, four-legged. Her first thought was predators, and she almost laughed. After everything, to be eaten by alien wildlife seemed almost fitting. But as the shapes drew closer, she realized they were too small. Too young. Cubs. They emerged from the storm like ghosts. 6 of them, covered in thick white and gray fur, their breath steaming in the frigid air. Vanar beasts, the survey team had called them. Apex predators in their adult form, massive and territorial. But these were juveniles, barely waist-high with oversized paws and uncertain gaits. The largest one approached first, its ice-blue eyes fixed on Jessa with an intelligence that startled her. It sniffed the air, ears swiveling forward, then made a deep rumbling sound in its chest that the others seemed to understand. This was Kor, though Jessa wouldn't learn the name until much later. Right now, she only knew him as the brave one, the fierce one, the cub who refused to back away when the others hesitated. Kor circled her once, twice, then did something unexpected. He lay down beside her, pressing his warm body against her freezing side. The heat was shocking, almost painful against her numb skin. Jessa gasped, her breath coming in shallow rasps. One by one, the other cubs followed Kor's lead. They surrounded her completely, a living blanket of fur and body heat, sheltering her from the worst of the wind. They were saving her life, and they didn't even know her. Or perhaps they did. Perhaps they understood in the way that young things sometimes do that life, any life, was worth protecting. Hours passed. The blizzard raged. The cubs didn't leave. Jessa drifted in and out of consciousness, her mind playing tricks. She remembered Earth, remembered the meadows behind her childhood home, warm and green and impossibly far away. She remembered her mother's voice, her brother's laugh, the smell of rain on summer pavement. She remembered why she'd joined the Exploration Corps in the first place. Because humanity had always reached beyond its grasp, always pushed into the unknown, always refused to stay small and safe and afraid, even dying on an alien world. Abandoned and alone, she felt proud to be human, proud of the stubborn, reckless species that had clawed its way to the stars. When she woke fully, the storm had passed. The sky above was clear and painfully bright, 2 suns casting double shadows across the snow. The cubs were still there, watching her with curious eyes. Kor stood guard a few meters away, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if he were keeping watch for danger. Jessa tried to move and nearly screamed. Every muscle ached. Her suit had failed completely, its systems dead, but somehow she was alive. Frost had formed in her hair, her eyelashes, but her core temperature had stabilized. She'd survived the night because these creatures, these cubs who should have been afraid of her, or indifferent or hostile, had chosen to stay. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice cracked and raw. Kor's ears twitched. He looked back at her, and for a moment their eyes met. Some understanding passed between them, wordless and complete. Then he yipped, a sharp commanding sound, and the other cubs stirred. They rose, shaking snow from their fur, and began to move. Jessa tried to stand and failed. Her legs wouldn't support her weight. Panic fluttered in her chest, but before it could take hold, Kor returned to her side. He pressed against her, solid and steady, and somehow Jessa understood. She grabbed his fur, thick and coarse beneath her gloved fingers, and pulled herself upright. The cub didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He bore her weight without complaint. Together with Jessa leaning heavily on Kor and the other cubs flanking them like a protective honor guard, they began to walk. The journey was agony. Every step sent fire through Jessa's frostbitten feet. Her vision swam. Her breath came in labored gasps, but she refused to stop. The cubs moved at her pace, adjusting their speed to match her stumbling gait. When she fell, they waited. When she struggled over a snowdrift, they pushed from behind with their noses and heads, tiny forces combining to help her forward. Cor never left her side. Hours later, or perhaps days, Jessa had lost track. They reached the emergency beacon she'd activated before the expedition left. The signal was still transmitting, a tiny pulse of hope in the frozen wilderness. Jessa collapsed beside it, her strength finally spent. The cubs gathered around her again, their warmth a comfort she no longer had words to thank them for. When the rescue ship finally appeared, descending through Vanar 7's atmosphere with engines roaring, the crew found something they hadn't expected. Corporal Jessa Rhine alive against all odds, surrounded by a pack of Vanar cubs who refused to let the strangers approach, until Jessa herself called out that it was safe. Later, when she'd recovered and made her report, the xenobiologists were fascinated. Vanar beasts were solitary, they said. They didn't form packs. They certainly didn't adopt other species, especially not alien ones. It was unprecedented, impossible, but Jessa knew better. She'd learned something out there in the blizzard, something the galaxy was still struggling to understand about humanity and its place among the stars. Loyalty, compassion, the refusal to abandon the helpless. These weren't uniquely human traits. They existed throughout the universe in creatures great and small, in species that had never heard of Earth, but humans recognized them. Humans honored them, and perhaps that recognition, that respect for life in all its forms, was what made humanity special after all. Cor and his siblings were eventually relocated to a preserve, protected and studied. But sometimes on quiet nights, Jessa would dream of that blizzard, of the fierce young cub who'd led the others through the storm to save a dying stranger, and she'd wake with tears on her cheeks, grateful beyond words to be alive.